One of the great things about view cameras is the ability to manipulate the image by using different camera movements to control the depth of field and perspective. Well, what if I told you that there's a way to have similar control with your digital camera? For years, there have been specialty lenses that offer tilt and shift capabilities for 35mm format. Unfortunately, these options often cost well over $1,000. But recently, I found a way to convert many of the old vintage lenses in my collection into a functional tilt-shift lens. Fotodiox, a company that makes lens adapters, has a line of adapters called the Tilt Rocker. In addition to converting different lens mounts, they also have a semi-articulating body to give you most of the camera movements used in large format photography. Now, to be clear, there are a few caveats. First, while they cover most of the major brands, Fotodiox doesn't make adapters for every lens-camera combination, so make sure that the adapter is available for your desired combo. Second, these are completely manual adapters, so focus and aperture are controlled manually. While they do make some adapters for modern focus-by-wire lenses, these will only function on the adapter when shot at a wide-open aperture. So if you want to use the full aperture control, you'll have to have a lens with a manual way to stop down the lens to small apertures. Third, you'll have to take into consideration the image circle projected by the lens you'll be using. This will determine the amount of functionality the adapter will give you. Lenses made for 35mm will throw a much smaller image circle on the sensor than a larger lens made for medium format. Tilt and swing movements work with both lenses, but when using extreme shift or rise and fall movements, vignetting may occur. Therefore, medium format lenses are recommended for full frame, and 35mm lenses should be used with APS-C. This causes a problem, however, since I want to occasionally use wide angles for the tilt function for landscape photography. The widest lens I own in my Hasselblad system is a 50mm, hardly a wide angle. But I do have a manual 25mm Carl Zeiss lens on Nikon mount, so this fills that gap in the system. And since I primarily want it for the tilt function, which isn't affected by vignetting, I can still use it on full-frame 35mm format. The Fotodiox adapters are a much cheaper option than buying a dedicated tilt-shift lens. I chose to get one for Nikon mount and one for Hasselblad mount, both converted to my Canon RF system. The medium format tilt rocker is much larger because the Hasselblad lenses, in particular the 50mm, are huge. So much so that I decided to modify mine by outfitting it with a lens collar to help balance the weight and take the pressure off the camera mount. As you can see, the mounted 50mm is quite a contraption, but it's still much smaller and more convenient than bringing a 4x5 and accessories. With this adapter, I can have access to a variety of image manipulating movements. I can tilt or swing to place the focus plane where I want, or I can use shift, rise, and fall to correct perspective or to capture several images to stitch into panoramics or larger files. I can also rotate the lens to have any combination of both and place the focus wherever I want it. Let's take a look at some images to see what the advantages are of having such an adapter. In this first image, the 25mm lens is focused on the flower in the foreground, shot wide open at f2.8, and the adapter is set to 0 degrees. This is being used as a simple adapter and showing what the image would look like with any other conventional camera at the same settings. Being a wide open aperture, the image is as you would expect. The flower is mostly sharp, but pretty much everything else is blurred out. In fact, the depth of field is so shallow, even the front and rear petals of the flowers aren't quite sharp. If this is the effect you intend, this is fine. But if your goal is to try and get as much depth of field and sharpness in the image as possible, there are some things we can do to achieve that. Our first option is to stop down the aperture, but if we go too far, we can run into diffraction. This is where you might get the maximum depth, but it's at a loss of actual sharpness. So this next shot is still focused on the flower, same 0-degree tilt, but this time we've stopped the lens down to f/16, not quite all the way, but enough to minimize the diffraction. The flower is still sharp, and we've gained a lot in the middle ground of the image, but the bark of the trees in the background are still not sharp. Now let's see what the effect of tilting the lens forward does. You don't need much. Let's make it about 7 degrees. This is going to change the composition on the image, so we'll have to recompose a little. We'll keep our f-stop at f/16, but this time for focus, we're going to use our hyperfocal scale on the lens to place our range of focus between the f/16 parameters. Now you can see that the flower is sharp and the image stays sharp all the way out to the bark on the trees in the background. So if you're a landscape photographer looking for an advantage in image control, don't want to spend a fortune on a dedicated tilt-shift lens, and already own some quality vintage lenses, this option might be for you. I hope you find this tip handy, and until next time, I'll see you on the trail.